Hello, everyone, and welcome to the EV Geek podcast, where we dive into the latest and greatest in the world of electric vehicles and sustainable energy. We're your hosts, Joel and Sebastian, and today we will be talking about a little slice of forbidden fruit, the BYD Dolphin. In this video, we're going to explore kind of cutting-edge technology, impressive features, and sustainable design of the BYD Dolphin, and how it represents the future of electric cars and obstacles that BYD and other Chinese automakers will face in the US. The electric vehicle market is getting more crowded by the day, but one newcomer is making waves: the BYD Dolphin. This Chinese automaker is no stranger to innovation, and their latest offering is packed with features that could change the game. So, what makes the BYD Dolphin so special, and could it really take on the likes of Tesla and Volkswagen? The BYD Dolphin is a compact hatchback from the top Chinese automaker, BYD. It was released in 2021. Its biggest claim to fame is that its homeland of China, it's crazy cheap. It starts at 99,000 yuan, which is equivalent to around 14,000 US dollars. And the top of the line model will run you around $18,000 after conversion. The base trims of the vehicle are powered by a 45 kilowatt hour LFP battery pack. It's using BYD's Blade format that I think you can actually get Tesla uses overseas as well. And then the top trims will get you a 60 kilowatt hour battery in that same kind of LFP format. Size-wise, the vehicle's pretty dang similar to the Chevy Bolt. It's actually maybe like a couple inches smaller, but really not super noticeable. And then it has plenty of features as well that are standard. It includes a 12.8 touchscreen that rotates, fancy stuff, and as well comes standard with adaptive cruise control, cross-traffic monitoring, blind spot monitoring, adaptive or automatic emergency braking, and etc. Peak charging rate on the small battery is only 65 kilowatt, which is pretty low for a modern EV. But remember, $14,000 in China's market, with the big battery getting a peak of 88 kilowatt. BYD claims the small battery can go from 10 to 80% in 38 minutes, and the big battery can do the same in 40 minutes.
So yeah, I really like what I've seen from the BYD cars, including not only their tech, but their price, as China is able to sell their EVs relatively cheap across China and Europe and other countries, over in that part of the world. We'll talk about how they can do this in a little bit, but looking specifically at the Dolphin, they have other models as well. It reminds me, kind of like what you said, it kind of reminds me of what a refresh Bolt would look like. So if the Chevy decided to make the Bolt refresh it, it would look like this, or kind of like a Bolt on steroids. It's a compact hatch. 4 trims. It has the active, the boost, the comfort, and design. You kind of mentioned those earlier in the battery packs we get with it. The first 2 with the smaller battery, and the latter with the bigger battery in it. It is a smaller EV. We're gonna have some pictures up on the screen while we're talking, so you'll see those pop up. But like I said, it has really good tech and it's spacious. It seats 5 comfortably. It has a large storage in the trunk. For example, some cool features of it. The door handles have been sculpted to resemble a dolphin's fin. So kind of just subtle things like that kind of make it cool. Looking at some reviews of this and what other people have seen, the quality overall seems pretty strong too. Sure, there's going to be some cheaper, harder plastics and things like that. And then, you're not getting a BMW, you're not getting a Mercedes here or a Porsche on the interior. But this is an inexpensive car, like you mentioned. You get a top of the line one of these in the US, if you could, for less than $20K. I mean, that's just mind-boggling. Even the base active trim comes with auto high beam LED headlights, electrically adjusted front seats. I know some base models don't get electrically adjusted seats, but this comes with it. Has all the safety equipment, has those 360 parking cameras. And with cars coming out of China, you're going to expect to see those high level of text features in these vehicles. That central screen you mentioned earlier is bright. It's clear. It's 12.8 inches, which, like I said, you don't see that big of screens usually in smaller cars. But looking at it with this price parity, you're not going to see comparable cars in the US like that. You see like the bigger Auto 3 and the Seal and the Dolphin's touchscreen, like you mentioned, it can rotate. And we're not just talking about what it looks like on your screen, but you actually press a button and the whole screen goes, horizontal to vertical, which is pretty cool. I mean, depending on what you're doing in the car, some people prefer horizontal, some people prefer vertical. Safety wise, this was crash test industry in Europe. The NCAP gave the Dolphin a 5-star rating. That puts it in line with its closest competitors for safety. I would say that the car looks good. It looks fine. Has great hardware. It's kind of creative. It's kind of a fun car, kind of like the Bolt. You know, the Bolt's kind of a little fun car. It's got good interior, and for its footprint, it has impressive space.
Yeah, so I mean, it all sounds kind of great, especially on paper, but when can I get one?
So yeah,
Unfortunately, in the US, the answer is you can't.
you can't. So yeah, so you're probably not going to run out and get one. So if you've been living under a rock, the Biden administration recently just raised the tariffs on Chinese EVs. So it used to be under Trump, it was 27.5%. And now it's 102.5%. So you're saying if you want to sell that $20,000 car over here, the tariffs are going to double that price. So now you're looking at a $45,000 car. And they did that to price these cars out of the U.S. market. Europe got a little worried too. The European Union plans to impose a tariff up to 38.1% of Chinese for 4 months. That started back in July because they don't want to start risking losing some of their automakers like Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes, because those cars will start taking a hit as well. And kind of a scenario that kind of scares the U.S. automakers. And I don't know how I feel about this, but just think if this has happened. Think BYD decides, and they've talked about this, setting up a shop in Mexico to build cars because we have trade agreements with Mexico and China. You know, the tariffs are roughly, I think 2%, 2.5% coming out of Mexico. So once in place, they start building these in Mexico and they start shipping these cars into the U.S. As they start going on sale, thinking about what those cars cost. An average EV in the U.S. costs $55,000. The U.S. struggles to compete. U.S. factories close. Workers lose their jobs. Basically, that would be the end of the auto industry, the EV auto industry kind of here in North America if these cars were to come over. If there's some rules that let automakers assemble cars in the United States, in Mexico to enter the United States at a nominal 2.5% tariff rate. So either way, China could sell its EVs well below typical U.S. prices. The U.S. will probably combat this and would do everything in its power to keep EVs from China out of the country. So my question for you, Sebastian, is: do you think that's right? I mean, do you think that's fair? Or are you for just bring them in and let competition just let's let them fight it out and see who wins? I mean, it's a tough it's a tough situation to be in.
It's a tough situation. So the reason that they're able to sell these EVs so cheap is because they're heavily subsidized by the Chinese government.
Mm-hmm.
So since 2009. Or from 2009 to 2021, Beijing has spent 953 billion Chinese yuan on kind of subsidizing EV growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
In China. They can sell the cars that cheap because the Chinese government is probably paying half of the cost for what it takes to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can understand where, as in the US market, it's not necessarily fair for a Chinese EV, a Chinese manufacturer who has the Chinese government backing, super strong, to then be able to sell their vehicle in the US, where maybe the US automakers don't get that same backing. It's a hard kind of, pill to swallow.
It's a catch-22, basically, is what it is.
Right, because at the same time, you want your US automakers to look at this and instead of just being afraid, get out in front of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Figure out what you have to do to maybe make the cars cheaper. Figure out what you've got to do to, actually appeal to the mass market. Kind of like they could be using this as an opportunity to advance, but it feels like instead we're just going to use it as an opportunity to shut out any competition and, which I'm not saying it's unjust. I think a tariff is necessary, especially as long as China continues funding basically funding the cost of a vehicle, right? Because who knows how much it would be if China wasn't giving BYD so much money. It probably wouldn't be a $20,000 vehicle.
Nope.
And so to make it fair, if China is going to continue to do that, then maybe, there should be a tariff. But I don't know if 102% was the right number.
Yeah, that is high. What I kind of look at, when what people don't look at it, when they look at EV sales, they think America. They think EV sales America. U.S. is a very small fraction of EV sales. I mean, I saw one article today when I was researching for this episode. 62% of EVs sold globally are from China. Only 10% is from Tesla. So people think Tesla's making all these cars and selling them over the world. 10% is from Tesla, 62%. I mean, you have BYD, but you also have other automakers in China that are making vehicles as well. And they're just as good as the BYD tech-wise. So My concern is not what's going to happen to the automakers here in the U.S. I think they can kind of live in that bubble and still survive in the U.S., but U.S. automakers sell globally.
Mhm.
GM has a partnership with SAIC in China. They're getting demolished right now with that partnership in China, because these Chinese automakers are just outselling them. We've seen reports of Volkswagen taking hits in China. We've seen reports of Honda taking hits in China because of these EV automakers. So it's something that they're going to have to grapple with, maybe not here on the U.S. soil, but they're going to have to grapple with it overseas. And I just don't see, China's not stopping. They're not stopping their subsidies. I mean, they're going to,
Right.
unless they're going to pull back or something, they're going to keep doing it because that's what China does. They want to rule the
Right.
world with EVs. And, I kind of agree with what you said, would I like to see them over here in the United States? Yes, I would like to see them on the roads. I think they're cool cars, but there has to be some kind of level playing field. You can't just bring a $20,000 car over here and expect to sell for $20,000 and put the rest of the EV automakers out of business.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
It's tough. It's just tough. I
Yes.
mean, really. So, what's the verdict? Is the BYD Dolphin really the future of electric cars? I think it's a contender with its focus on innovation, affordability, and practicality. It suddenly made electric vehicles a lot more appealing to a wide range of buyers because it's $20,000.
It's $20K, y'all. That's why.
The only question that remains is, will we ever see it in the US? And who knows at this point.
Yep.
Thank you all for joining us today. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and ring that notification icon so you know when new episodes are released. You can follow the EV Geek podcast and Kilowatt Station on X. We will see you again on our next episode. So long, everyone.